Hello everyone, in today's session we are going to discuss the asynchronous task and its use in Android application development. We have discussed threads in previous lecture. Now in this lecture we will also discuss the relation between async task and the thread. Now first of all, what async task is? Android async task is going to do in background operation. That means that async task is basically used for background operation and it operates on the background thread and publish it on the user interface thread. That means the async task runs on the background but it publish it in the main thread. In Android, we can't directly touch background thread to main thread in Android development. That is, we can't directly touch the background thread. Async task is an abstract Android class which helps the Android application to handle the main UI thread in efficient way. This means that async task helps to handle the main thread in an efficient manner. When you work with Java, by default you have one thread. To understand async task, you must be aware about the concept of thread. In Android, we have user interface thread. By using async task, you can achieve multi-threading. So the basic use of using async task in your mobile application development is to provide the multi-threading. Now, how you can implement this in your class? You can implement this in your class by extending it as async task. Async task class allows us to perform long-lasting tasks or background operations and show the result on the UI thread. Async task helps us to make communicate between the background thread and the main thread. Now let's take an example to explain the use of async task. For example, you have created an application which will download the MP3 file. Now here we can talk about that there are basically two threads. One is UI thread and second is async thread. Because whenever we launch an application that send request to the server to download that MP3 files, the system has to wait. So to omit that wait, we have to use a new thread that is known as async thread. As the response from server is awaited, the application has become unresponsive since the main thread is still waiting for download operation to complete. This means that whenever we launch an application to download the MP3 file, the server takes time to respond to the client, so it becomes unresponsive. To overcome this, we can create a new thread and implement run method to perform this network call as we usually do in normal Java application so that UI remains responsive. So async task here comes into play. But handling it with separate thread may create some additional issues when we try to update UI based on the result of operation performed, since Android UI toolkit is not thread safe. So here we will create async task for the synchronization between the client and the server. Android took all these issues in consideration and created a dedicated class called as async task that handles the operations that need to be performed at the background asynchronously. Now this diagram shows the need of async task. Now here you can see this is Android application launch. This means whenever you click on the Android application, a main thread is created. Then main thread will request to the server to download MP3 files, and this file will take some time to get downloaded, and for some time the application becomes unresponsive. So here async task has to be created. Now these are the methods that are to be used in the async task. There are four methods that are to be used with the async task. First method is on pre-execute method. This method is used to do something before the request has sent. Before doing background operation, we should show something on screen like progress bar or any animation to user. We can directly communicate background operation using do in background, but for the best practice we should call all async task methods. Now second is do in background. Now here params, progress and results are three generic types which have to be declared as parameters in do in background method, on progress update and on post execute method. Now what we do in background method? In this method we have to do background operation on the background thread. On this method should not touch on any main thread activity or fragment. This means that This method is called this method is called and executed only in the background. Third is on progress update. Now whenever a thread is created, a user has to wait for some time. So here we have to use some progress bar user that the processing is going on. While doing background operation, if you want to update some information on the user interface, then we can use this method. Last is on post execute method. This method is executed after on progress update method. This method will store the result of the on progress update method. This means that here the MP3 file will be downloaded. In this method, we can update user interface of the background operation result. This is a diagram showing all the 4 methods of the async task. First is on pre-execute. This method is executed before the request. Second is do in background. This method is executed when the request has been sent to the server. And here on progress update runs parallelly with the do in background. And last is on post execute, in which result parameters are to be passed after doing background operation. Now, when we use background threads, responsiveness is one of the most critical attributes of a good Android application. So we must take care that the application we design is responsive. In Android activity that don't respond to an input event within 5 seconds or 10 seconds, then we do not use async task there. And broadcast receivers that don't complete their on receive handlers within 10 seconds are called as unresponsive. So async task is basically used to handle the short operations. They can't be used for the long duration operations. It's important to use background thread for any non-trivial processing that don't directly interact with the user interface. Now here, how we can use async task to run asynchronous task. The async task class implements a best practice pattern for moving your time-consuming operation onto background. This means that if your application has any time-consuming operation, then you can move that time-consuming operation onto the background thread by using the async task class in your Android activity and synchronizing with the UI thread for updates and when the processing is complete. It offers the convenience of event handler synchronized with graphical user interface thread to let you update view and other UI elements to report progress or publish results when your task is complete. Now how we can create asynchronous task? Each async task implementation can specify parameters. If you don't need or want to take input parameters, update progress or report a final result, or simply specify void or all the types required. Async task must be subclassed to be used. The subclass will override at least one method. That can be do in background method having params parameter, and most often will override a second one, that is on post execute result method, that is a result of the background operation. Task generic. Now these are the 3 generic types of async tasks that can be used along with the callback methods. First is params. These types of parameters are sent to the task upon the execution. Progress. These progress units published during the background computation. Means this parameter is used to show the progress of the background operation. Here result is the type of the result of the background computation. It is not mandatory to use all the generic types and callback methods in your application. It depends upon the user requirement. To mark a type as unused, simply use the type void. As here in this you can see private class. Here private class my task. My task is the name of a class that is extending async task, and we are not passing any parameter here, so it is void written here. Now what we discussed in this session we have discussed use and need of async task, the steps to perform async task, the generic types of async task, and the syntax to create the async task. In the next session we will discuss service states and life cycle. Thanks for watching this video.